presentation. And as Reem said earlier, or Aisha said earlier, if you got any questions, please raise your hand, or you can type it in the chat box, and we're going to consider it, yeah, at the end of the session. Thank you very much. Talal?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can see my screen at the moment. So the objective of today is to shed light on some of the common terminology. Those of you that are very familiar with the industry may already know this, but those that are not, hopefully get to learn a few of the terminologies that are important when it comes to negotiating their freight rates and all. So when looking at the problem, obviously the challenge is not a Bahrain challenge. It appears to be obviously the shipping industry is huge and there is plenty of room for improvement and transparency. So when you look at your typical bill of lading, as you have here, we highlighted that the challenge seems to be that when you receive rates, certain transit costs accrue during the transit time. So these rates, the liner would find out upon arrival, which are accordingly passed to freight forwarders, then accordingly passed to customers. So also, before I forget, if you can please put your email in the chat box below so that we can send you this presentation. I will skim through it briefly, but then each person can have it as well at their leisure to refer to the glossary. So in a nutshell, there seems to be a lack of communication globally in order to enable the customer to know the certain charges, which we call in the industry the surcharges that come later. In regards to shipping services, so what we will go is, this is your general Incoterms, which we feel is important for any importer or exporter to be familiar with. The terms are generic, and they're the 2020 Incoterms that are used throughout the industry, but the areas to highlight is the payment, insurance, and how duties are paid. And that's how the various Incoterms here. Rather than go through each one of them, you will have the presentation sent to your email and you can go through each. There are some that are more popular than others that are in terms of practicality, such as ex-works and delivery duty paid, but each one of them has its various implications on import. All right, in regards to shipping lines, so shipping lines obviously have various different factors when it comes to the import. Hence, there are charges that they incur during the journey and at the port, and those are naturally passed through to freight forwarders, whom pass them through customers. As we go through the presentation, we're going to go through in detail of defining certain charges and why they are incurred, and hopefully allowing users to be able to tell which should and should not be incurred. So I'll briefly go through each and every one of those. So low sulfur charges are the charges that are typically incurred in the European Union. Panama, as the name suggests, are usually incurred in Panama. And if you look at the right side of the chart, depending on what sort of shipment you're importing, if you're doing a full container load or a less than container load, this is how you or your logistics team or anybody that can confirm these charges by looking at how they should be calculated. So sometimes certain files are calculated by file. Sometimes you notice the terminology over here, W or metric weight, which means whichever is larger, whether it is by weight or by measurement, whichever is larger. So again, just moving forward, ocean freight is your typical ocean freight for moving from one point to another. This applies to all countries. The Suez Canal surcharge is obviously related to the Suez Canal. Aden Gulf charge is a charge that, due to certain risks of piracy and all, is a premium that gets added on, and this is added to the liners and accordingly passed on. Bunker charges, which I'm sure many of you are familiar, is an additional surcharge. Again, applies to all countries. Currency is something, so there are two different elements where one should take currency into consideration, both on the BL side, the bill of lading side, and Incoterms, an order agreement as to how payment will be done, and also at times currency adjustment depending on how freight is to be calculated. And interim fuel, again, is fuel related. Surcharges. Collection fee is a collection fee that is very common, that you noticed in almost all DOs that come in. Security fee, again, applies to LCL and FCL, and it is on a per file basis. Customs entry is a tax imposed on at local regulation. Documentation is the documentation usually charged at various points, and these are incurred by both the freight forwarder and the liner. Origin fuel charges are again charges that are incurred all countries and both on FCL and LCL shipments. Origin terminal handling charge, which I'm sure many are familiar with. These are charges at cost that are passed from the terminal, and in our case, we have Bahrain's APM terminal. We have advanced commercial information, which is very much related to Canada if the consignments are Canada related. Advanced manifest filing is specifically related to China and Japan. AMS security fee is US related. So the objective of this file is for you to validate, to have a glossary that you can validate when you receive these charges, to confirm if your consignment is not coming from China or Japan, then for example, you should not be receiving these AMA fees, and the same applies to Canada's fees. So that is how one can ensure that validity of the charges that you're receiving.
This is a really good one here. Congestion surcharges. I mean, we are lucky in Bahrain. Yeah, I mean, we don't face this at the Port Khalifa, but the shipping agency may charge additional handling fee for those to basically bring the cost added into the surcharges that applies on the sea freight. So the consignee will end up paying those kind of charges. Yeah, this is really important. But thank God we don't see it in Bahrain, honestly speaking.
Excellent. Thank you, Ali. Yeah, and then moving on to emergency bunker differential, and these are the higher fuel prices that are anticipated. Again, if you look at the right column, you'll see how they're charged and how they are calculated. Emergency risk surcharge, again, is due to various hazards and violence. It's a risk charge that is incurred. General rate increase is a very important one, and I ask those that are negotiating rates to always keep an eye out. If you look at your typical quotation, when you receive a shipping quote, you always notice that in the bottom it would mention the GRI clause in the bottom, which means that even though you have agreed rates, even though you have already aligned with providers, unexpectedly due to various conditions in the globe, there is a GRI increase that is sometimes introduced, and this is not particular to your shipment. This is generic, and it sometimes makes it very difficult for you to fix fees when in reality GRI is something that's outside most everyone's control, and aside from the shipping lines assigning these fees. Heavy lift is related to heavy lift. Sorry, I may clarify that the abbreviations for each one of these is on the column on the left. So if you receive these as charges, you will usually receive these short abbreviations and may not understand what it is, hopefully you can go back to this document and it will clarify for you how it is calculated, where it applies, when does it apply, and when is it correct or wrong for these to be applied. Overweight surcharge is again applies to cargo that is overweight, and it mentions over here 14,000 kilos. So not on any overweight, there are specifics and it's very clear. Peak season surcharge is a surcharge that's peak season based on the situation of the market, and it covers seasonal periods in which.
And it's also based on the continent itself, yeah. So it's not necessarily the peak season within the region here is the same peak season in for example, in Australia. So we need to consider that as well, yeah.
Yeah. And then emergency dredging fees are mainly related to Brazil, if you are importing from there. Hazardous relates to bringing hazardous shipping goods. MARPOL surcharge is a marine pollution charge that gets passed on as well. Security manifest documentation is mainly a US, Canadian, Mexican surcharge. That's a balance surcharge, which is about empty containers and in large quantities, and that's where the countries it applies to. Emission control area is another MARPOL related one, related to emissions overall. Moving on to, these are mainly FOB, and these are very much related to the day-to-day business. The bill of lading and shipping documentation charges is something pretty much anyone importing or exporting would face. The cargo declaration is a European Union security process. LOLO refers to load, lift on and lift off of shipments, and this is how it applies. It's another administration cost that gets incurred. Demurrage, as you're all aware, is related to delays and damages, and detentions are the same. Homeland security is a terrorism cost, mainly focused on the US market, and the same applies to importing and filing. It's a US customs requirement that's mainly US market related and requires you to have 48-hour notice and certain requirements. Load on, lash off, load on, lash, and security are these charges mainly focused on shipments and additional charges that one incurs throughout the process. And the port infrastructure are port costs that are passed along. Repositioning costs are costs incurred with the containers and shipping cargo to compensate the costs that are paid. Terminal handling we've already covered, which is pretty much in our case is the APM charge. And wire lift refers to special wire that is used to lift consignments. Fuel surcharge is similar to the fuel surcharge we've already incurred. High cube relates to a certain high cube container that would have additional charges due to it being high cube. Container cleaning fee is also one that you would see in Bahrain's case. It would be additional costs. Most suppliers outsource this to the likes of Basrec and all, but these are passed along to the customer as and when it applies. And chassis fees are again to facilitate overland, usually last mile delivery or first mile delivery on the overland side of it. And pier pass fee, again, this applies mainly to the Los Angeles market, so US mainly. Wharfage is the use of the port's wharf. On carriage is the unloading and discharging for inland movements. And destination charges are those charges that in our case would be the place of where the cargo is destined to, and in our case would be Bahrain-related charges. So, not to take too much of your time, but the idea was to give you, in a nutshell, some of the glossary terms so that one, during negotiating with freight forwarders, can be more familiar with terminology, and also sheds light to when is it right to charge these and when not. And hopefully this is helpful when it comes to reconciling. So again, as I mentioned earlier, please, if you leave your email address, we can send you this this document, and hopefully it comes in handy for you and your logistics department. Thank you.
Thank you, Talal. Appreciate it. Thank you. Gentlemen, as we said earlier, if you got any questions, please feel free to write it down in the chat box, or maybe you can raise your hand so we can allow you to join and ask the question. Thank you. Adil, sorry.
Not yet. Not yet. You need to.
Yeah. Aisha, over to you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Talal, and thank you, Ali, for sharing this presentation and this valuable information. I would like to let you all know that you can raise a hand to address your question directly to our speakers, or even type them in the chat box. But once you do that, please start with your name and your business line. Please go ahead if you have questions.
Does anybody have any questions? You can either type the question or you can raise your hand in the chat.
We have Adil Turk. Yes, Adil Turk, please.
Please go ahead, Adil.
Yes, good morning. Thanks, Khaled. Thank you very much for this meeting. It's great to have these meetings once in a while. Anyway, this Incoterms, thank you, Talal, for explaining the Incoterms, but we know all these Incoterms for the past 30 years. We are in business. So this is ABCD of freight forwarding and shipping. I think the people that are on the list, they are all of them very well aware of all these Incoterms. I think we need to have other issues, discussion about other issues. Incoterms, it's everywhere. We know it very well, you know, by heart. And we have been seeing it every day. We are just practicing it every day. So no need, I mean, I think it's no need to explain to us one by one what our Incoterms stand for. It takes us backwards, you know. Anyway, we have issues to discuss. I think we have problems to discuss. If we are here for this meeting for only Incoterms, then I think it's very basic. But if we are here to discuss issues, problems that we have in the seaport, in the DHL, and everywhere, then I think we need to have another meeting. Yeah, we have many problems that we need to face. Ali, you said that we don't see all these charges in Bahrain. Yes, we do see many charges in Bahrain that maybe you don't see because you're in the air freight courier service. We see them in Bahrain, many charges that are not even in the Incoterms. So we have many problems to discuss rather than Incoterms. If we are here for this, please let us know. We can discuss the problems we are facing. Thank you. Mr. Khaled, please.
Ali or Talal, if you have something to say, can you go ahead now? Otherwise.
Yeah, well, Adil, thanks for your concern. I mean, this seminar today, basically talking about the shipping lane and LCL challenges that have been raised in the past. So we are not going to talk about anything else apart from this subject. As you said, you're an expert in this field. Yes, I understand, but there are some new joiners into this kind of business that raised that question in the past. That's why we thought, you know, we're going to have this kind of gathering or meeting to explain those kind of justification or clarification for everyone to understand. And That's what I can tell you now. But if you got any specific question or concern about other charges that not being covered by the Incoterms, then please let us know so we can take it to the concerned parties. Yeah.
Yes, we actually have a question here in the chat from Arif Ubaidi. He's asking about the reason for the increase in shipping costs in general.
Will Talal answer that?
I think Ali will be in a better position to answer that given the market overview.
Okay. Main reasons is not only for shipping charges. The entire because of the demand, actually, it is demand requirements all around the world now when it comes to logistics. So the cost of the fuel, the cost of the handling, the cost of the manpower, everything is being increased around the globe. So that's why, I mean, the companies or the shipping freight forwarders will end up increasing a bit of charges just to align and adapt to the requirements. Actually, that's the only thing. It's not only with the shipping agents, shipping or ocean freight forwarders. Yeah, so it's everywhere. I mean, we can feel it as individuals as well.
I will continue to answer further on this subject of the increase in prices. The main cause has been actually a shortage of containers. And the reason for that is due to the pandemic. A lot of consignments and orders or unnecessary materials like clothing and shoes and other matters like that have declined because nobody has been allowed to go to shopping malls or any hotels and so forth. So a lot of imports have reduced. So when you have a reduction in the number of floating containers, then there will be some demand in other sectors like pharmaceuticals or industries and so on. And that shortage will definitely increase the cost of the containers required to bring in such material. So this is the main cause if you're concerned about the price of containers. So the shortage has affected the prices in the market.
As well, yeah.
Adel, you have something to say, but please keep it short because we have many others who are also asking questions. Thank you.
Yeah, just adding to what you said, we have shortage containers to the Middle East because Europe are paying higher freight. You know, if we are paying 6,000 from China to Bahrain, in Europe they are paying 10,000. Anyway, Mr. Talal, we have been doing Incoterms distribution, all this for the past 10 years. We have been giving it around to all our clients. Everybody knows about Incoterms. So these are, normal things. So I think we have better things to discuss rather than Incoterms, you know.
Okay.
You know, these terms are being distributed to all our clients. They all know about all these Incoterms.
Okay, Adel, thank you. We understand, you know, you're a professional in your field and we appreciate your sharing of this information. But as Mr. Ali says, there are several newcomers in the market and all of those who are experienced like yourself are well informed, but we need to share for others who are not as informed as yourself. And it is great that you can share that to your clients. And this is part of our job to make sure that all other participants in the transport and logistics sector are also aware of what you are executing right now. I understand your concern is about the excess fees that are coming on invoices and so forth, but this is just on another subject that these are hidden charges and this is a totally other subject. And you know, we have been discussing this for the past 2 years and actually these are now charges that everybody has to live with. Just like the virus everybody has to live with, These are virus charges for containers and shipping lines, and everybody has to adapt to it. So I'm glad you're laughing at it because that's become a fact. Thank you very much.
We actually have another question in the chat from Ajit. It's a long question and a comment at the same time. It says, each agent or line charges a different fee, making it difficult for importers to calculate landing costs at the cargo. There are always surprises, and this is a gray area. This is part one of his comment. And then the second part says, if the terms are prepaid or CIF, why are GRI, empty containers, monitor fees, post recovery service fees, and QSHE fees charged? Anybody would like to comment on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to comment.
Yes.
So Ajit, I'll respond based on my experience on the freight forwarding side. As I had mentioned earlier, so when you get quoted, and this is a dilemma that we all face, both as importers and as freight forwarders, because naturally a customer, when they would like to procure freight, they want fixed charges. But in reality, sometimes it is not as easy on the ground, because as I mentioned, even as a freight forwarder, when you procure your rates, the clause of surcharges and GRI is always there. So if for those that are not aware, GRI is the general rate increase. So although this is not there all the time to time, liners will send a circular to all freight forwarders to say that new GRIs have applied effective this. So although you may agree with your freight forwarder a certain rate that is locked in for, let's say, a period of 2 weeks, then these GRIs may apply if the liner has reason to apply those charges. Then these would be in addition, but these would be passed along exactly as received. So although I understand your concern about making it controlling your costs, these are sometimes it is sometimes not possible in the shipping industry to do so due to these unexpected GRI costs that are passed on to the liner, but accordingly passed on to the customer. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, Talal. I think Ajit would like to speak to us, would like to comment furthermore on this.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for the answers. So I'm also from the freight forwarding background. I'm here in Bahrain last 24 years in the same industry. So what I'm trying to explain here is that, for example, the shipment is prepaid and all the charges still Bahrain destination. Bahrain is paid by the supplier. So what I'm trying to explain is that when the terms are C&F, why these charges are billed to the consignee. This is what my concerns, because there should be no standardization of the destination charges. Every agent has got different charges, because we know what are the costs in Bahrain. We know THC, delivery order fee, handling fee. These are the standard charges applicable in Bahrain. So what I'm trying to say is we need to have a standardized charges for the destination charges. This is what I was trying to explain.
Thank you, Ajit. If I may comment further. I think it's an excellent idea in an idealistic world to have standardized charges, and this applies to both GRI and all these other charges that. But I think it would be interesting to learn from you if you have examples anywhere else in the globe where they have been able to do that, and then maybe the Chamber of Commerce can explore suggesting such a recommendation to maybe the Ministry of Transport, and whether this is possible. But like yourselves, of course, it would be very nice for us to be able to know our GRI costs included within, in order to be able to commit to customers prices that do not factor into such GRIs. So I agree with your recommendation. I just wish we had a practical example of another country that was able to do this, and hopefully we can raise it as a strong recommendation if that's what you suggest. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, sure.
I would just like to share a suggestion here that we have from Jassim Al-Musawi. He's speaking about remote payment, remote electronic payment. When would it be applied in Bahrain? And he's saying that it will cut costs. Any opinions on that?
Hello, Jassim. I hope you're well. As you're aware, we've had a meeting together and we have introduced the suppliers of such services. Now, the situation is between the shipping lines and this organization to get together to make sure that they are able to cooperate and therefore to provide all in this sector this service to pay online without further delays and with regards to the banks. So once that is done, we will be following up with the shipping lines. And once that's done, I hope that everybody will receive this notification that our target has been achieved, inshallah.
Khalid, if you allow me to add as well on Jassim's suggestion.
Yes,
I think,
please.
yeah, I think Jassim's recommendation is an excellent one. The idea of payments and digitization in the industry is something I think that is a given that will happen, and whether or not we implement it in Bahrain, I think globally we are heading in that direction. Bahrain has come a long way in terms of very recently DO desks were very cash-based and things have improved substantially, but of course we would like to see much more improvement both as a consumer and shipping line. But I think it would be interesting to see, even to take that even further, to see maybe a Bahraini company that focuses more on digitization of the shipping industry, like you see abroad, companies such as Flexport, startups that have helped on really making the shipping experience much more transparent, in line with making it easy for payments and such. And it would be very nice to see something of that sort originated in Bahrain. So.
I agree on what you just said, Talal. Jassim, thanks for the question. I think we are in the time of transition now from cash or credit card, whatever, to digitalization. So it's coming. I know you have raised it in the past. We are talking about it internally, so we are heading in the right direction now. Thanks for the question again.
We have Adil Turk. He would like to add something. Yes, Mr. Adil, please.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding online payment, we have been discussing this for the past 6 months. We have a major problem with BAS, Bahrain Airport Services, that they are still, they are not accepting payments online. And I recommend that Mr. Khalid has directly to speak to their CEO to make it happen ASAP. And Ali Aryan, regarding your online payment, is still not on yet. I've spoken to your office, to the reference you gave me, and you said it's on 2 months ago. No, it's not. And please talk to them and make it ASAP so that we can pay our bills, online, so we don't have to have the hassle of going all the way there and standing in the queue. That's it. Thank you.
Adil, as I have emailed you, I said that after this, we will be having meeting with Bahrain Airport Services, and we'll keep you updated. Thank you very much.
I believe we have another comment from Avrin, if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Arvin, sorry. It says, once we book the shipment, the liner is canceling our booking without prior information, and later we come to know that there will be no space in the vessel and the shipment will be moved to the next vessel. So we face delay in our material. How can we avoid such situation?
Talal, do you have any
would you like to
experience
comment on this?
Sure. my comment is very much aligned with what Arvind says. Yani. Obviously, we face the exact same problem, and this is a global problem, obviously, due to demand, lots of demand with liners and all. So as freight forwarders, of course, it puts us in a very tricky position when we take bookings and all of a sudden we face the exact same situation. So in terms of how to avoid this situation, generally speaking, the liner will offer you a much more expensive rate, but as a freight forwarder, that makes it very difficult to justify to the customer because one would have already agreed rates. So as for a solution, I don't have one. This is a global problem, and with demand so high at the moment, this naturally people's shipments get bumped off to the next carrier. But yes, if you have any recommendations that one would like to escalate or raise, I think we would all very much be supportive of such.
Arvind, I would like to make a comment here. You know, you're aware of passenger airlines, and all of these issues are simply occurring because of the pandemic. And when an airline has booked to fly on a particular date, if they see that they don't have enough passengers, they're going to cancel that flight and move it to another date. So please be aware that the same thing is occurring and happening to the shipping industry. And that's why you will see that if a vessel is not fully loaded and it does not, it may cause them to incur a loss, then they will postpone the shipping date or they will ask to change your consignment to another vessel. I hope that is clear. Thank you, Ahmed, for your question. Okay, you said that I've indicated that my statement was that, you know, there are certain costs that are hidden costs and that many are not aware. And as per the clarification of most of these charges that Mr. Talal and Mr. Ali have presented in the presentation, that several people were not aware of these costs, but as Mr. Adel and other professionals have experience in this field, they are aware of these charges, but the clients may not be aware of these charges. So I know that you are a trader and therefore you're one of the at the receiving end. So I hope that some of these charges may be clarified in this presentation. Thank you.
I believe we tackled all the questions that we have today, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us in this webinar. Special thanks to Mr. Khalid Turk with me here today, and members of the committee, Talal and Ali. And thank you all for joining us today. I would also like to highlight that this webinar is also available on the YouTube channel of the Chamber. Thank you.
I would like to conclude also that, you know, should you have further questions or any issues that you're facing, please do not hesitate to email the Chamber. You can find the emails available on the website. Should you have any queries, please do forward it to us and we will attend to them as necessary. Thank you very much. All right. No, Adel Turk. Okay, thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Bye-bye.